"Who do you think you are, speaking to me like that?" the older man snapped, his tone filled with indignation. I didn't flinch. I met his eyes with unwavering calm and replied evenly. "Mr. Nguan," I said, my voice steady, "I can't help you unless I know everything. No half-truths. No omissions." He huffed, clearly offended, but he didn't argue. His pride took a hit, but he said nothing more, just looked away and shook his head. "My name is Danielle. That's not the name I was given at birth, it's the one I chose. I'm a 30-year-old attorney, and everything I am today is because I fought for it. I didn't inherit my success. I built it. I was 6 years old when my parents left me at an orphanage and never looked back. They didn't die. They didn't get lost. They chose to leave me behind. And now, decades later, they sit across from me in my office, asking for legal advice, completely unaware of who I am. I remember the last time I saw them. My mother had dressed me in my favorite yellow dress with little white flowers, saying we were going somewhere special. I held her hand tightly as we walked into the orphanage. The hallway was dim and smelled of bleach and loneliness. I didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of my new life. She crouched to my level and gently brushed a lock of hair from my cheek. "You'll be happy here," she said, her voice soft but empty. "They'll take care of you." I blinked. "When are you coming back?" She hesitated. Her smile was forced. "Soon. Just be a good girl, okay?" I didn't cry when she walked out. I stood there, watching the door, waiting for her to return. But the door stayed closed. That day turned into night. Days turned into weeks. And eventually, I understood, she wasn't coming back. From that moment, the orphanage became my world. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't loving either. I learned quickly that you couldn't count on anyone. If I wanted something, I had to earn it. No one was going to save me. No one was going to hand me a future. So I worked. I focused on my studies with everything I had. Books were my escape, the only place where I could disappear from the cold, sterile walls around me. I became obsessed with success. With proving that I mattered. That I wasn't disposable. But the nights were always the hardest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering questions into the dark. What did I do wrong? Was I too loud? Too needy? Did I fail them somehow? Eventually, those questions turned into fire. I used that fire to push myself harder. To get better grades. To outshine everyone. I didn't want pity, I wanted power. I promised myself that one day, I'd show them. I'd become someone so unshakably strong that they'd regret ever letting me go. When I was 10, I learned the truth. It came from Mrs. Patel, the head of the orphanage. She had always treated me with a softness she didn't show most of the others. One afternoon, she pulled me aside, and what she told me changed everything. "Danielle," she said softly, guiding me into her cozy, overfilled office, "you're old enough now to understand why your parents left you here." Her voice was gentle, but her words cut deep. "Your parents came from a very traditional culture. When your younger brother was born, they believed their duty was to devote everything, time, energy, resources, to him as the future of the family." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process. "But I'm their child too," I whispered, my throat tightening. "Why wasn't I enough?" Mrs. Patel sighed, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It had nothing to do with your worth, sweetheart. It was about their values, their expectations. And they were wrong, so deeply wrong. But they thought they were doing what they were supposed to." That night, lying in bed, the full weight of their abandonment finally crashed over me. They hadn't left because I'd misbehaved or disappointed them. They left because I was a girl. And to them, that meant I was disposable. After that, something hardened inside me. I stopped waiting for answers that would never come. Instead, I poured everything I had into creating a life they'd never imagined for me. At school, I excelled. I devoured every textbook, stayed late in the library, and pushed myself harder than anyone else I knew. I let my pain drive me forward. By 16, I was winning science fairs, math tournaments, debate competitions, anything that let me prove I had value. Teachers took notice. "Danielle," one of them said once, "you're going places. You just need someone to open the right door." That one sentence sparked something in me. I started applying for scholarships like my life depended on it, because, in a way, it did. When the acceptance letter from one of the top universities in the country arrived, I held it like a lifeline. It was more than just a college admission. It was my escape route. The orphanage threw a modest party. Mrs. Patel hugged me tightly and whispered, "You've earned every bit of this. Go out there and show them who you are." College was like stepping into another world. For the first time, I wasn't just the abandoned girl. I was a student, a leader, someone worth listening to. I took on everything I could: internships, research positions, volunteer projects. I studied harder than ever before and built a name for myself among professors and peers. Law school followed, and it was relentless. But I thrived on the intensity. I poured my history into my work, using it to connect with cases about justice, about protecting those who'd been overlooked or dismissed, just like I had been. By graduation, I had multiple offers from top-tier law firms. I chose one in New York that specialized in advocacy and community work. It wasn't just about prestige, it was about purpose. I wanted to fight for the people who felt like I once did, forgotten, unseen. Most people didn't know my backstory. Not because I was ashamed, I wasn't. But because I wanted them to see me as I was now, capable, strong, accomplished. Every success, every small win, reminded me of the girl I used to be. And I knew she'd be proud. I first met Mark during my second year at the firm. We were both assigned to a joint case, a complex housing rights dispute that had everyone on edge. At the beginning, he was just another name on an endless list of attorneys, but over the course of several intense weeks, I began to see the man behind the title. He had this quiet warmth, a natural charisma that made even the longest, most grueling workdays feel a little more manageable. What started as brief exchanges between meetings slowly evolved into lingering conversations and late dinners after the office had emptied out. At the time, I was cautious, guarded, really. I had spent years keeping my emotions tightly locked away, focused solely on my career. Letting someone in didn't come easy, but Mark never pressured me. He was patient, gently giving me space while still showing up, again and again, with unwavering kindness. I still remember the night we wrapped up the case and he walked me to my door. "You know," he said, pausing as I reached for my keys, "you carry so much on your shoulders. You don't have to do it all alone." His words lingered with me for days, carving a place in my heart I didn't know was still open. As our relationship deepened, so did our conversations. We started sharing our hopes for the future, career goals, dreams of travel, and eventually, the idea of starting a family. I had always shied away from that topic. The thought of becoming a parent scared me, not because I didn't want children, but because I feared I'd fall into the same traps my own parents did. But with Mark, the idea didn't feel daunting. It felt safe. It felt real. Of course, love alone couldn't fix everything. The reality of our lives, student debt, New York rent, and the steep cost of simply existing, soon crept into the picture. Despite working full-time, our salaries were just enough to keep us afloat, not enough to build the future we envisioned. Mark, ever the optimist, kept reminding me that we'd figure it out. "We're a team," he said one night, as we sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by spreadsheets and takeout containers. "We'll make it work." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do more, earn more, contribute more. I loved my job at the firm. It meant everything to me to help people who had no voice, to fight on behalf of those forgotten by the system. It was fulfilling in all the ways that mattered, but it wasn't financially sustainable. Not if we wanted to grow our lives together, not if we wanted to be parents someday. One night, after staying late to prep for a hearing, I sat at my desk staring at the mounting pile of case files and realized something had to give. It wasn't an easy conclusion to reach. I'd poured years into public interest law, but love and idealism weren't going to cover childcare or a mortgage. The life I wanted with Mark required a different kind of sacrifice. That evening, over pasta and wine, I finally said it out loud. "I've been thinking about applying to some bigger firms," I said, carefully watching his face. "Corporate law, maybe." He blinked, surprised. "Really? You've always been so passionate about what you're doing now." "I do," I admitted softly. "But it's not enough. If we're thinking about starting a family one day, we need to plan for that future. I want to give our kids the kind of steady, secure life I never had growing up." He reached across the table and wrapped his fingers around mine. "If that's your dream, I'm with you," he said simply. "You'll thrive no matter where you go." As I updated my resume and began exploring opportunities at larger firms, an old thought started resurfacing, one I'd buried for years: my family. The ones who left me behind. I had convinced myself long ago that I didn't need them, that I was stronger without them. But now, as I thought about building a family of my own, the curiosity I had long repressed came creeping back. Who were they really? What kind of life had they created without me? I only had scattered fragments of information, bits I'd pieced together over the years. Mrs. Patel once mentioned they came from money, part of an influential community. That truth always stung. They didn't give me up because they had to, they gave me up because they chose to. The bitterness lingered, but curiosity was beginning to eclipse the pain. I needed to know the truth. The next day, I picked up the phone and called the orphanage. Mrs. Patel had long since retired, but the new director, Claire, sounded friendly and eager to assist. "We still have some of your records," she said. "If you're able to visit, I'd be happy to go through them with you." I agreed. As I hung up, a nervous flutter rose in my chest. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew it was time to find out. A few days later, I walked through the gates of the orphanage. It had been years, but the old brick buildings and the faint sound of children playing transported me right back to my childhood. Claire greeted me at the door, her warm demeanor easing some of my nerves. "Come in, Danielle," she said, guiding me toward her office. "I've gathered a few things you might want to see." We sat at her desk, and she slid a slender folder across to me. My fingers trembled as I opened it, flipping through the aged papers filled with faded ink and handwritten notes, snapshots of a little girl left behind. "Your parents," Claire said gently, "were part of a very wealthy family. From what I found, they were business owners, quite well known in their community." She paused, watching my reaction. "It wasn't about money." I swallowed hard, nodding slowly. It wasn't news, not really, but hearing it out loud still struck something deep. "Is there anything else?" I asked, my voice calm but tight. Claire hesitated, then passed over a photocopied newspaper clipping. It was a feature piece on the Nguan family, my family. The article talked about their thriving business and public success. There was a photo, too, my parents, clearly older now, standing proudly beside a young man who had to be my brother. They looked perfect. A picture of success. A complete family. As if I'd never existed. The day I left the orphanage felt like something inside me had torn apart. Part of me yearned for answers, to know why I was left behind, but another part begged me to move on. What would I even gain from digging up a past that had already shaped me? They had made their decision, and so had I. I had spent years building a life on my own terms, and I wasn't about to let their rejection weigh me down anymore. I stuffed the folder of records deep into a drawer at home and made a choice, to focus on the future that was finally coming into view. Just a few weeks later, all my hard work came to fruition. I landed an offer from one of the top corporate law firms in the country. The role was exactly what I'd been striving toward, a position that offered not only financial security but also the prestige of handling major clients and complex litigation. When I shared the news with Mark, he wrapped me in a hug, beaming with pride. I never doubted you for a second, he said, his voice warm. You've earned every bit of this, Danielle. I threw myself into the new position with the same fire that had carried me this far. The job was demanding, endless deadlines, high expectations, and late nights, but I thrived in that kind of environment. I barely had time to think about where I came from or the questions that once haunted me. For a time, it felt like I had finally outrun the past. Then everything changed again. Mark and I welcomed our daughter, Mia. From the moment she arrived, tiny and perfect, my world shifted. Motherhood awakened a fierce sense of purpose in me. I wanted to give her the kind of life I never had, a home where she would feel loved without question, where she'd know she was wanted every second of every day. At the same time, my career kept climbing. I became one of the firm's youngest senior attorneys, earning respect for my sharp instincts and relentless work ethic. The long hours didn't stop, but I found a rhythm. Mark picked up the slack at home when needed, and we supported each other through it all. We were building something solid, something we had both dreamed of for years. But sometimes, during the stillness of the night while rocking Mia to sleep, I'd be hit with flashes of the past. I'd wonder how my parents could have ever looked at their own child and chosen to walk away. With Mia in my arms, it felt impossible to comprehend. I always pushed those thoughts aside. They didn't deserve space in the life I had now. I had a family of my own, the one I built with love, not the one that abandoned me. One morning, I arrived at the office, coffee in hand, ready to tackle a full day of meetings and casework. As I set my things down, a gentle knock sounded at the door. Danielle, my assistant said with a friendly smile, Mr. Roberts would like to see you in his office. He mentioned it's regarding a new client. I grabbed my notepad and adjusted my blazer, intrigued. New clients meant new challenges, and I was known for handling the toughest, most sensitive cases the firm took on. When I stepped into Mr. Roberts's office, he barely looked up from the papers on his desk before gesturing for me to sit. Morning, Danielle, he said, settling back in his chair. We've signed a high-profile client. It's a tangled situation, allegations of financial mismanagement, lawsuits piling up, the possibility of bankruptcy. It's confidential, delicate, and requires someone with both discretion and grit. I think you're the perfect fit. He slid the file toward me across the polished desk. It's all yours. I picked up the folder and flipped it open, my eyes landing on the name printed across the top. My heart nearly stopped. Nguan Holdings. My parents' company. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as the name pulled a wave of memories to the surface. The orphanage, the yellowing newspaper article I found years ago, the sharp sting of abandonment. I quickly glanced at Mr. Roberts, forcing a calm expression across my face. Thank you, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll begin reviewing it immediately. I walked back to my office in a fog, clutching the folder as if it were a lifeline, or a ticking time bomb. My thoughts spiraled, anger, disbelief, and a gnawing curiosity that refused to let go. I shut the door behind me and sat at my desk, staring at the file in front of me. Nguan Holdings. My parents' empire. The same people who cast me aside like a forgotten chapter of their story were now sitting, unknowingly, on mine. I sat still for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to shove the file into a drawer and never open it again, to preserve the distance I'd spent so many years creating. But another part, the lawyer, the survivor, needed to know. Needed to see the truth for herself. And so, with trembling hands, I opened it. The first few pages read like a slow unraveling, summary reports, numbers in red ink, desperate letters from creditors. The company was circling the drain, riddled with lawsuits, steep debt, and unpaid vendors. It was a mess. A disaster in bold print. As I flipped through the pages, one name kept surfacing, Nguan. My brother. The chosen one. The boy who could do no wrong. Apparently, he had been handed control of the business a few years back, and in that time, he'd managed to gut it from the inside out. There were missteps at every turn, poor investments, tone-deaf leadership, a refusal to pivot with the market. The business had suffered under his guidance, and now it was gasping for air. I leaned back in my chair, my hands trembling slightly as I exhaled. The cruel symmetry of it all was staggering. The family that had discarded me, that had centered their world around him, was now on the brink of collapse, because of him. And here I was, the unwanted daughter, with the power to either pull them out or let them drown. The irony hit me like a punch to the ribs. That night, I stepped through the front door still gripping the folder like it might slip from my hands. Mark was in the kitchen, swaying gently with Mia in one arm while stirring a pot on the stove. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the house, comforting, familiar. But I felt a knot in my chest that dinner couldn't undo. "You're home early," he said, offering me a warm smile. "Everything all right?" I placed the folder down on the kitchen island, my fingers lingering on it. "Not exactly," I said quietly. "Something's happened. I need to talk to you about it." His expression immediately shifted to concern. He gently set Mia in her playpen and turned toward me, brows furrowed, already bracing himself. "What is it?" I drew in a long, steady breath and told him everything, about the unexpected client, the name on the file, and the painful past I had buried for years. As the words spilled out, I watched the shift in his expression, from confusion to shock, and eventually, to understanding. "So let me get this straight," Mark said, his tone careful and measured. "The same family that abandoned you is now facing bankruptcy, and their future rests in your hands?" "That's the situation," I said, arms crossed as I leaned back against the kitchen counter. "It's pretty unbelievable, isn't it?" Mark ran a hand through his hair, his brow drawn together. "And are you actually thinking of taking this on?" "I don't know," I replied with a sigh. "But I can't pretend it's not happening. I think I need to see them again, look them in the eye. Maybe then I'll know what the right move is." He nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "That makes sense. You've never been one to avoid hard things. Just promise me something." "What's that?" I asked, returning his gaze. "That whatever you decide to do, you make the choice for you," he said gently. "Not for them. Not out of guilt. You don't owe them a damn thing, Danielle. If you move forward with this, it has to be your decision, on your terms." His words struck deep, and I nodded, the weight of it sitting heavy on my shoulders. "I'll remember that," I said softly. "The meeting's tomorrow. I'll decide afterward." Mark stepped closer, wrapping me in a steady, reassuring hug. His arms around me were grounding, and I let myself rest against him for a moment. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "I'm right here with you." The next morning, I sat at my desk, eyes fixed on the phone, my thoughts spinning. My assistant had already reached out to Nguan Holdings to schedule the meeting, and they'd agreed without hesitation. Now all I had to do was confirm the details. With one final breath, I picked up the phone and dialed. "Nguan Holdings, good morning," a woman's voice greeted me. "How can I direct your call?" "This is Danielle from Cross and Roberts," I said, keeping my voice professional. "I'm calling to confirm the appointment scheduled with Mr. Nguan for tomorrow." "Yes, of course," she said cheerily. "We have Mr. Nguan and Mr. Ba Nguan confirmed for 11 a.m. Will that time work for you?" My heart skipped at the mention of Ba's name, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Yes, that's fine. Thank you." Once the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a shaky breath. It was official. In less than a day, I'd be sitting across the table from the people who had once walked out of my life without a second thought. I wasn't sure how it would go, but one thing was certain. I was finally ready. That night, sleep was elusive. I tossed in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, mind crowded with questions. What would I say? What would they say? Would they recognize me at all? Tomorrow held all the answers, and I was bracing myself to meet them head-on. Every time I shut my eyes, their faces from that newspaper clipping would invade my thoughts, older, sure, but still unmistakable. When my alarm finally rang, it felt like I hadn't rested at all. The following morning, I moved through my routine with mechanical precision. I chose a sharp black suit and tied my hair into a tight, no-nonsense bun. If I couldn't feel confident, I could at least look it. At exactly 10:50 a.m., I stepped into the conference room and gave myself one final mental push. "You've faced worse, Danielle. You're ready for this." Right on the dot at 11 a.m., the door opened, and they walked in. My father entered first, radiating the same commanding presence I remembered from childhood. Trailing him was Ba, features more defined with age but still carrying that unmistakable sense of entitlement. Neither so much as glanced my way as they approached the table. "Miss Danielle, thank you for making time for us," my father said, extending his hand. His tone was civil, professional, and disturbingly void of any recognition. I took his hand with unwavering control. "Of course," I replied smoothly. "Please, have a seat." As they settled in, I opened the folder in front of me, flipping through the contents with calm deliberation. "Let's get to the point," I said crisply. "Based on my initial review, Nguan Holdings is in a critical state. Years of poor leadership, irresponsible spending, and legal battles have brought the company to the brink of collapse." I couldn't help myself. My father flinched, his posture stiffening, and his face turned red with restrained fury. I could see it, his pride boiling beneath that carefully composed facade. "Excuse me," he snapped. "Who do you think you are, speaking to me like that?" His voice thundered across the room. For a second, I just looked at him. This man, this stranger, had no clue. He didn't know that the woman sitting across from him was the very child he abandoned, the daughter he had deemed disposable. Now here I was, no longer invisible, no longer powerless, and he was the one needing me. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part wanted to scream. He didn't even recognize me. He couldn't see who I had become. And now I held the power to determine what comes next. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you expose the truth right now, make him look me in the eye and realize exactly who he left behind? Would you take the case, fix what he broke, just to show him how strong I am without him? Or would you walk away, leave him and his precious son to watch everything crumble? Then there's that darker thought I can't shake. Should I be the one to ruin them? Should I let the company fall, make them feel even a fraction of the pain I carried for years? Is that justice, or just revenge? I'm still torn. Whatever I choose will change everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Maybe your perspective will help me decide how this story ends. Hey there! If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out and makes sure you never miss another powerful story like this one. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.